Imagine a world where power doesn't rest in the hands of governments but is controlled by organizations operating in the shadows. From the narrow alleyways of Sofia, Bulgaria, to the Mediterranean sea routes connecting Turkey to Europe, two underground forces, Bulgarian gangs and Turkish smuggling networks, not only clash but also shake the foundations of global social and economic systems. But what defines their power? How do they operate? Where does their funding come from? And how do they impact society? More importantly, can the authorities muster enough strength to combat these organizations? Join us as we delve into the gripping story of the region's two most formidable criminal forces in today's video. Imagine a world where criminal gangs not only operate underground but also dominate international trade routes, defying borders and laws. In such a world, Bulgaria and Turkey emerge as power hubs for transnational crime organizations. But why do these two nations play such pivotal roles on the global crime map? Since the 1990s, when Eastern Europe experienced massive upheaval following the fall of the Soviet Union, Bulgaria has become a hotspot for illicit activities. Its strategic location on the Balkan route, linking West Asia to Europe, provided an ideal setting for local gangs to control the trafficking of contraband goods. These organizations didn't just aim to dominate the domestic market but set their sights on EU markets with counterfeit goods, smuggled cigarettes, and synthetic drugs. On the other hand, Turkey, positioned at the crossroads of three continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa, has long been regarded as a gateway for international smuggling activities. Its geographic advantage enables Turkish smuggling networks to transport heroin from Afghanistan to Europe via Iran and maritime routes. Unlike Bulgarian gangs, however, Turkish networks aim for global influence, leveraging strong ties with immigrant communities in Europe to establish strategic transit hubs. The activities of these organizations extend far beyond local boundaries. In Bulgaria, gangs primarily control the domestic market, ensuring that any drug trade or counterfeit goods operations within the country pass through their hands. From there, they expand into EU nations like Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands, where there is a high demand for counterfeit goods and smuggled cigarettes. In these regions, the presence of Bulgarian gangs is reinforced through black market business networks and even shadowy political connections. Meanwhile, Turkish smuggling networks operate on a more international scale, acting as a bridge between Asia and Europe. These organizations not only manage the largest heroin trafficking route in the world but also oversee human trafficking and arms smuggling. The Mediterranean sea routes have become their lifeline, connecting areas like North Africa and Southern Europe. Here, the goal extends beyond profit to building a sustainable global network to support long-term operations. The influence of these organizations on local communities and societies differs significantly. In Bulgaria, the presence of gangs is often associated with low-income areas, where they provide jobs through counterfeit production facilities or small-scale smuggling activities. For some locals, this offers a stable source of income, especially in regions where the formal economy struggles to meet basic living standards. However, the cost is the erosion of the legitimate economy and public trust in the legal system. In contrast, in Turkey, smuggling networks impact not just local communities but extend their reach internationally. Within immigrant communities in Europe, they are seen as critical providers of illegal employment and financial support. Yet behind this facade of support lies a grim reality. The drugs and goods from these networks have caused major social crises in destination countries. Both organizations take full advantage of systemic loopholes in legal and administrative systems. In Bulgaria, inconsistent law enforcement across regions allows gangs to easily expand their operations. In Turkey, the complexity of the political system and internal tensions often enable smuggling networks to operate with minimal resistance. With such extensive operations and profound influence, these organizations are not merely profit-driven, they have become forces reshaping the regional crime landscape. But the pressing question remains: what enables them to sustain and thrive so effectively? Join us in the next segment, where we delve deeper into their organizational structures and operational strategies. If the scope of operations highlights the stark differences between Bulgarian gangs and Turkish smuggling networks, their organizational structures and operational strategies are the defining factors that determine their survival and expansion. Let's start with Bulgaria, where gangs are not only powerful but also operate with a tightly knit, nearly unbreakable structure. In Bulgaria, criminal gangs follow a clear hierarchical model, resembling a pyramid. At the top are the leaders, often seasoned and influential bosses, responsible for strategic decisions and overall management. Beneath them are regional commanders, each overseeing a specific territory or sector such as drug smuggling, counterfeit goods, or managing political relationships. This structure ensures tight control over all activities, from supply chains to distribution networks. The unique strength of Bulgarian gangs lies in their high degree of specialization in various domains. A prime example is counterfeit production. From operating secret factories to organizing distribution networks, every process is meticulously managed to maximize efficiency. This not only generates enormous profits but also minimizes the risk of detection. In contrast, Turkish smuggling networks operate with a more decentralized and flexible structure, significantly different from the Bulgarian gangs. Instead of a central authority, small independent groups operate autonomously while maintaining close coordination when necessary. This creates a vast, resilient network that is difficult to dismantle entirely, as each group can function independently without relying on a central hub. A notable example of this decentralization is the heroin routes from Afghanistan through Turkey to Europe. One group may handle transportation across the Iran-Turkey border, while another oversees distribution in Germany or the Netherlands. Each group operates independently, yet all contribute to the overarching goal of ensuring an uninterrupted flow of heroin. The operational strategies of these two organizations reflect their structural differences. Bulgarian gangs prioritize territorial control, meaning any activity within their regions must be sanctioned by them, and any encroachment is met with immediate retaliation. Violence is a common tool used to protect their territories, with assassinations, threats, and attacks being regular occurrences. On the other hand, Turkish smuggling networks focus on maintaining the sustainability of international transport routes. Rather than territorial control, their primary concern is ensuring the safe passage of key shipments. Part of this strategy involves fostering relationships with immigrant communities in Europe, where they find support and a safe cover for their operations. Modern technology plays a significant role in the strategies of both organizations. Bulgarian gangs frequently use encrypted communication systems to ensure security, while Turkish networks leverage cryptocurrency for money laundering and international financial transactions. These tools help them reduce the risk of detection by law enforcement while expanding their operations beyond physical borders. A common trait shared by both organizations is their readiness to use violence when necessary. Although their approaches differ significantly, in Bulgaria, violence is often employed as a tool to maintain internal order and eliminate rivals. Assassinations, attacks, and threats are directed not only at rival gangs but sometimes at businessmen or officials who refuse to cooperate. In Turkey, violence tends to be less overt. Retaliatory acts or disputes are often carried out discreetly to avoid drawing international attention. However, this does not mean Turkish networks hesitate to use force. When necessary, they are prepared to take drastic measures, especially to protect critical transport routes. What stands out is the remarkable adaptability of both organizations to shifts in legal and political environments. This flexibility is the key to their sustained dominance in the underworld. Bulgarian gangs thrive on exploiting systemic weaknesses, such as inconsistent law enforcement, while Turkish networks capitalize on geopolitical complexities to secure their operations. Despite their different strategies and structures, both organizations demonstrate the ability to operate seamlessly on a massive scale. But how do they manage such smooth operations? What financial mechanisms underpin their success? These are the questions we will explore in the next segment. Behind every major criminal organization lies a massive financial engine, working to ensure smooth operations, from bribing officials to paying low-level members. But how do Bulgarian gangs and Turkish smuggling networks maintain stable financial resources over decades? To answer this, we need to examine how they earn, manage, and sustain their financial systems, making them so difficult to dismantle. Bulgarian gangs derive their income primarily from three core activities: counterfeit goods smuggling, illicit cigarettes, and synthetic drugs. One of their unique strengths is their ability to produce counterfeit goods on an industrial scale. From hidden factories scattered across Bulgaria's rural areas, counterfeit products bearing the names of famous brands are mass-produced and transported to EU markets. These goods, including shoes, clothing, and electronics, not only yield enormous profits but are also difficult for authorities to detect due to the complex distribution systems in place. Illicit cigarettes are another significant source of revenue for Bulgarian gangs. They control the supply chain from production to distribution, capitalizing on the high demand in Western European countries where legal tobacco products are heavily taxed. Each container of smuggled cigarettes can generate millions of dollars in profit, a substantial sum given the low production costs. Synthetic drugs, particularly amphetamines and methamphetamines, form the third pillar of Bulgarian gangs' revenue. With low production costs and high demand in markets like Germany and the Netherlands, synthetic drugs have become a flagship product in their portfolio. These drug production facilities are secretly built and operate under the protection of bribed local officials. In contrast, Turkish smuggling networks rely heavily on heroin, a drug that generates immense profits in international markets. As a critical transit point on the heroin route from Afghanistan, Turkish networks control nearly the entire smuggling corridor. From production and transportation to distribution, it is estimated that heroin alone brings these organizations annual revenues of up to $50 billion. Beyond heroin, human trafficking is another lucrative income source for Turkish smuggling networks. Positioned near refugee hotspots like Syria and Iraq, they exploit this proximity to organize illegal crossings across the Mediterranean. Refugees, desperate for a better life in Europe, are willing to pay between $5 and $10 per person for passage. This not only provides significant revenue but also remains relatively under the radar compared to drug trafficking. Arms smuggling is a third area where Turkish networks are active. Situated near conflict zones such as the Middle East and North Africa, they facilitate the transportation of weapons from Europe to war-torn regions and engage in arms deals between rebel groups and governments. What sets these two organizations apart is not just their income sources but also how they manage and utilize their finances. Bulgarian gangs focus on investing in legitimate businesses to launder money. Restaurants, hotels, transportation companies, and real estate are popular sectors. This approach not only legitimizes their illicit funds but also provides stable and long-term income streams. Turkish networks, on the other hand, allocate a significant portion of their profits to fortify their smuggling routes. Bribing border officials, investing in modern transportation vehicles, and establishing secret facilities along smuggling paths are major expenditures essential to ensuring uninterrupted operations. Modern technology plays a crucial role in the financial systems of both organizations. Bulgarian gangs often rely on shell companies and traditional transactions for money laundering. Turkish networks, however, have quickly adopted cryptocurrency for their financial dealings. This reduces the risk of detection, while also expediting cross-border transactions. To sustain such enormous financial operations, both organizations face substantial operational expenses. From paying personnel and acquiring weapons to bribing officials, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Effective financial management is therefore critical to their survival and expansion. A key difference between the two lies in the stability of their financial sources. Bulgarian gangs rely on consistent income streams from counterfeit goods and illicit cigarettes. In contrast, Turkish networks depend more on high-risk ventures like heroin trafficking and human smuggling. This makes Turkish organizations more vulnerable to government crackdowns but also offers higher rewards if successful. Given these financial disparities, what happens when these organizations face pressure from authorities? How have the governments of Bulgaria and Turkey responded to these powerful criminal enterprises? These questions will be explored in the next segment. No criminal organization can operate without leaving a significant imprint on the societies it infiltrates. Bulgarian gangs and Turkish smuggling networks do not merely exist in the shadows but have profound impacts, both negative and, paradoxically, positive, on local and international communities. But what has made them such an integral part of the societies they operate in? In Bulgaria, the presence of gangs is most evident in economically struggling areas. Here, these organizations not only act as overlords, controlling markets but also provide jobs to locals through illegal activities like counterfeit production, illicit cigarette trade, or small-scale smuggling. For impoverished people, especially in rural regions, this sometimes serves as their only means of livelihood. However, the cost of such dependence is steep. When gangs control the market, the legitimate economy suffers severe setbacks. Small businesses are forced to pay protection money to avoid threats or sabotage. Areas controlled by Bulgarian gangs often become crime hotspots, with significantly higher rates of violence, intimidation, and inter-gang clashes. The presence of these gangs not only lowers property values but also deters international investors, slowing regional development. In Turkey, the impact of smuggling networks is far more international. Within immigrant communities in Europe, they are often seen as benefactors, offering jobs and financial support to struggling families. Yet behind this facade lies a darker reality of exploitation and covert control. Human trafficking, one of the primary operations of Turkish smuggling networks, has created a humanitarian crisis across the Mediterranean. Thousands of refugees, lured by promises of a better life, risk their lives crossing the sea only to become victims of forced labor camps or be coerced into other illegal activities. Even for those lucky enough to reach Europe, life remains challenging as they continue to live under the network's influence. Drugs from Turkish networks have also left a lasting impact on destination countries. Major cities like Berlin, Amsterdam, and Paris face rising drug addiction rates, placing immense pressure on healthcare and public safety systems. Furthermore, profits from heroin are reinvested into other illegal operations, perpetuating a cycle of crime and instability. The societal impact of these organizations extends beyond local communities. On a larger scale, they undermine public trust in legal and governmental systems. In Bulgaria, corruption within public institutions has become a major issue, with numerous officials exposed for accepting bribes from gangs to overlook illegal activities. This not only renders the judicial system ineffective but also fosters a deep sense of injustice in society. In Turkey, the situation is similarly grim. Despite large-scale government efforts to dismantle smuggling networks, political instability and internal conflicts have left certain regions as white zones, areas where the government has little to no control. Criminal organizations exploit these gaps to expand their operations, creating extensive influence networks that make combating them increasingly challenging. Interestingly, while both organizations cause severe consequences, their societal impacts differ significantly. Bulgarian gangs focus on local control, creating a form of short-term, false stability in the regions they dominate. In contrast, Turkish smuggling networks have a more global impact, contributing to widespread instability across multiple countries and regions. This leads to critical questions. What can governments do to curb these organizations? Are enforcement campaigns strong enough to dismantle the systems they've built? These are the questions we will address in the next segment. When faced with major criminal organizations like Bulgarian gangs and Turkish smuggling networks, governments cannot remain passive. However, efforts to combat these groups often encounter significant challenges. From internal corruption to a lack of international coordination. What have the governments of these two countries done to address these organizations? And have their measures been effective? In Bulgaria, authorities have launched several large-scale campaigns to dismantle criminal gangs. These crackdowns often target counterfeit production facilities, cigarette smuggling operations, and drug trafficking routes. One notable operation occurred in 2018, when Bulgarian police arrested dozens of members from a major cigarette smuggling network in Sofia. The operation resulted in the seizure of millions of illicit cigarette packs. But smuggling activities resumed just months later, exposing the government's inability to sustain pressure. The root cause lies in widespread corruption within public institutions. Many officials and local police officers have been found accepting bribes to overlook illegal activities or even leak confidential information, enabling gangs to evade raids. This undermines the effectiveness of government efforts and erodes public trust in the legal system. In contrast, Turkey has taken more decisive steps to combat smuggling networks. With support from international organizations like Interpol and Europol, cross-border operations have been launched to disrupt heroin trafficking routes and human smuggling activities. A prime example is a 2020 operation in which Turkish border forces, in cooperation with Greece, seized over 2 tons of heroin in the Aegean Sea. This was one of the largest drug busts in the region's history and showcased the potential of effective international collaboration against transnational crime. However, Turkey's internal political instability poses significant challenges. Many border regions, especially those in the east near Iran and Iraq, have become white zones, where central government control is minimal. Smuggling organizations have exploited these areas to establish secret facilities, turning them into critical transit points on the heroin route. The most significant difference between the two nations lies in their levels of international collaboration. While Turkey actively participates in joint operations with neighboring countries and international organizations, Bulgaria struggles with internal issues. Corruption and political divisions prevent Bulgaria from fully utilizing external support, allowing gangs to operate with minimal disruption. Not all efforts have been in vain. However, some major arrests have had significant impacts. In Bulgaria, a 2016 operation dismantled a criminal group specializing in amphetamine production, seizing over 500 kilograms of drugs. This was seen as a major blow to the local drug trade, though new facilities were soon established. In Turkey, another notable bust occurred in 2019 when Istanbul police seized 1.5 tons of heroin being transported from Afghanistan. This operation not only prevented a significant quantity of drugs from entering Europe but also disrupted an international smuggling network for several months. Both governments face immense challenges in combating these criminal organizations. In Bulgaria, corruption and a lack of international coordination remain significant barriers. While in Turkey, internal instability and pressure from international smuggling routes create ongoing difficulties. A common issue both nations encounter is the lack of uniformity in international legal systems. Criminal organizations exploit these gaps to operate with relative impunity. For example, discrepancies in cross-border crime enforcement procedures within the EU have allowed Bulgarian gangs to expand their operations into Germany and the Netherlands. Similarly, lax oversight at major ports has enabled Turkish networks to continue transporting heroin with few obstacles. Are current crackdowns strong enough to dismantle these organizations? Or do governments need to shift their approach, focusing more on addressing root causes like corruption and political instability? The battle between authorities and criminal organizations is far from over. But one thing is clear: without more coordinated and resolute action, these groups will continue to thrive and expand, leaving increasingly severe consequences for society. The story of Bulgarian gangs and Turkish smuggling networks reveals a stark reality. Organized crime not only persists but thrives by exploiting gaps in legal systems and weaknesses in international cooperation. The battle between governments and these shadowy forces continues, and the outcome remains uncertain. If you found this story intriguing, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming dramatic content. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.